All right, good morning, everybody. How are you this morning? Good? Pumped up? Okay, so we have sugar, so we'll be sharing just to keep you going. Fair enough? Excellent. Today, you're going to learn about reference solutions, okay, and how to identify target companies, and you can identify those target companies by the industry, by location, and by demographics, by the size of the company, either size in revenue or size in number of people. In addition, we're going to show you how you can use this tool to help you develop questions that you have that you're going to ask during your interview, or as you find people that you want to talk to that are in a target company, that you can ask them as you go along. So this tool will assist you with that effort. And to introduce myself, my name is Mike Ray. I'm a VP Director of Marketing and Product Management. Product transformation, customer satisfaction, company results. Mike Ray. And I'd like to introduce Pete.
Good morning, everybody. I think I know a lot of people in the audience, but just in case, Pete Hernandez. By the way, I love that picture. My hair was still kind of dark. So,
high school photos.
It is.
You and me both.
Yes. Anyway, I spent almost 40 years in the property casualty insurance industry doing both operations and IT management. And then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. Got tired of the corporate world. And people like Blake Zippoy and Brian Cortez over there worked with me in the past. So I'm sorry you guys are here. But anyway, happy to be here. And my past, like I said, is commercial insurance, personal property insurance. So now I decided in 2017, when I got laid off the last time, that this is what I wanted to do. So you'll see me around different groups in town. Yesterday we had an exec group. Today I'm here. Tomorrow we have the HR group. Please join us. That's online only. And then South Lake Focus on Thursday. So plenty of places for you guys to network and get to know each other. So anyway, moving on.
It's all yours.
It's all mine. Uh-oh. That case.
Can everybody see? We have a few chairs up here. If the people in the back want to move closer to the front so you can see better, that's okay. All right. Just be aware. A couple of the slides may be a little bit small. Okay.
All right.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Would Lee Gaudreau please raise your hand?
Uh-oh.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're in trouble already. We haven't even started yet. Yeah, just your name tag came loose.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So right off the top, let you guys know that neither Mike nor I are employed or any way associated with Reference Solutions or Data Axle, who's a parent company. So this is something that Mike and another guy found out about a long time ago during our job search. And we decided it was a wonderful, wonderful tool to use in your job search. So Mike and Kip back then started presenting this throughout the groups here in the Metroplex. And now we've progressed to the point where Kip has moved on and I'm his replacement. So anyway, again, we're not associated with him whatsoever. So it's just something we do on behalf of the job seeker community here. All right. So again, Reference Solutions is the new name. Closer.
So they can hear. Yeah.
Okay. Reference Solutions is the name of the product now. Some libraries still have it as Reference USA. That's the former name. When Data Axle acquired it, they changed the name of it. So don't be afraid. If you see Reference USA, it's the same product. So go ahead and use it. This presentation today is being recorded. So we will be posting it later on this week on our friscoconnect.org webpage. You'll be able to find it there. So if you have any friends at all that couldn't be here today, by all means, encourage them to go to our website. You can watch the replay there. And it's also, we've had past presentations up on Career DFW, Jeff Morris's site. We have it there, right there where it says in career files and all that. And then we're also on Facebook in the careerdfw.org, or excuse me, Career DFW page. So you can find us in many different places, not only this presentation here for this one on Frisco Connect, but also the past ones that are going to be up on those two additional sites. So you'll get us all over the place.
And can I add a point? This presentation that you're giving this morning will be posted on YouTube on the Stonebriar Events channel. Stonebriar Events channel on YouTube.
So we are everywhere. Can't get away from us. All right.
That's a scary thought.
It is. It is. Imagine, first thing this morning. All
Okay,
right.
so today, during this session, we cover the majority of things about this tool. And if there's anything that we say as we go along, if there's anything at all that we say that's not clear, stop us and say, I didn't quite understand that. Could you repeat what you just said? But for those of you with the type personality like I have, I'm interested. Does it do this? Does it do that? I'm excited. I get pumped up. I want to know, does it do all these things? Well, the answer is yes, it probably does. And we probably have it covered completely. But if we don't, there's a question and answer session at the end. We'd like you to hold your questions to that point. But if we say something that's not clear and you want it repeated, we'll be happy to do that. Fair enough? Okay.
All right. So first of all, what is a target company?
Now, we want you to raise your hands because there's little gifts of sugar that's going out during this time. And so we want you to raise your hand and we can call on you and then we can get you your gift of sugar as we go along. So what's the answer to this?
So yeah, who can tell me what is a target company? Go ahead.
An organization that uses template.
Very good.
Okay.
That is
John,
right
you
on.
got it? Good. Thank you.
Uh-oh.
Anybody else?
Take your.
Oh, wow, chocolate.
Yeah, you-
Oh, right. John, don't go too far.
There's always one in the audience, isn't there?
No, I'm sorry. That's Target. Go ahead and share, please. Good point. Okay.
And as you guys take candy out of there, remember Mike or John is mic'd up, so careful what you say when you get the goodies.
Yes.
A company that's out of Dallas, Fort Worth.
Okay. Could be a company that's out of Dallas, Fort Worth. Take your choice. There you go.
Okay, now people are just throwing out answers to get candy. I don't know about this.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
That's actually a very good point. It's a company you think you may want to work for.
Go ahead, Pete.
All right, so when Mike and I were in the job search a while back, and by the way, I think, Mike, you're officially retired now too? You're still debating it? Okay.
More or less, yeah.
All right. We're both in the same boat, kind of retired, but if that wonderful offer comes through, you want to pay me way too much money? Oh, okay. We'll go back.
Exactly.
Right. So my target companies, as I said before, was in P&C Insurance, and these will be my targets here. Things like, Hartford, Travelers, those kind of companies, Allstate, the things you typically see on TV being advertised during whatever event you're watching. So that would have been my targets back then. And Mike, you want to talk about yours?
And I'm from the HVAC industry, so Ream is over in Louisville, and so Ream HVAC was one of my target companies. In addition, Kubota just moved into Grapevine in the last few years, and I like to build big things or get involved with building big things. So Kubota tractor looked like a good opportunity for me. And then just to throw a curve in there, I pulled just a company at random out from Reference Solutions, and Compact Machine Tool. I pulled that up as just a random target company that I figured I'd take a look at and see if I could learn more about. So those were my three target companies. Yes?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your criteria? I mean, those are pretty large companies.
Yes.
What's the thought process behind?
Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. Yep, good question.
All right, so you guys have been to, is this your first networking group, anybody? This is your first one? Okay. Typically, when you attend networking groups, this is what you're asked to do. You're asked to identify yourself. You know, my name is Pete Hernandez, and you talk about what you do and operations management, for instance, and then my value. What do I bring to the table? Well, I help reduce expenses by 35% in my last 2 employers. And then the last one is you identify yourself again, because when you start talking, as you're always being told, okay, the other person may be, texting on their phone or just got into a fight with their spouse, whatever the case may be, they're not paying attention. But all of a sudden you said something of value, and so you always repeat your name at the end because you want to know exactly what you said and you want to be able to remember who you are. So one of the things that we do now as part of this is we always encourage people to, at the very end, also talk about your target companies. And what are your target companies? Have at least 2 or 3 you can throw out. Okay?
So show of hands, target companies,
Who's got them already identified?
ma'am.
At least 3.
target
Go
company.
ahead. What do you got?
For me, being in telecom for over about 30 years, trying to look more towards companies like CBRE.
CBRE and
The other one would be McKesson.
McKesson or McKeeson?
Yes.
Okay,
And I think those are my top 2 right now.
okay, great.
Anybody else want to share theirs? Blake, go ahead.
Sure. Okay.
Coming from both financial services and P&C insurance, as you and I work together. So big companies in financial services would be Frost Bank, it would be JP Morgan, Citibank, those kinds of companies. Then on the P&C side of it, because you're dealing with carriers, you're going to deal with companies like Lockton, you're going to deal with CNA, we're going to deal with Amwins, and some of those other kind of P&C carriers.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, good.
Sounds good. He wants
Yeah.
to get rewarded for his answer.
Well, you always do, but she actually had a question for that.
There you
All
go.
right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so
Go ahead, Rachel.
there's a lot of potential companies that are out there. And you think about it, think about how many companies there are in the United States that you could work for. Or potentially outside the United States that may want to open branches here in the United States. Okay, so there's a lot of potential companies that are out there. So how many target companies as a job seeker, how many target companies do you think you ought to have?
All of them.
A boatload, okay. Yeah, I agree. A boatload would be great.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's important. And so you don't want just one. And by the way, when I went to my accountability groups, the group I attended, every week I'd come back and I'd have one. And that one target company would be from LinkedIn or Monster or something, and I had just filled out a job application for that company, and that was my target company. I didn't have a list of companies. I was reacting to the job boards and looking at the job boards and saying, okay, my reaction was I'm going to go and I'm going to have this one will be my target company. And the guys in my accountability group were mad at me. They kept saying, no, you need more than one. Okay, so do I need 3, 4, 5? Or do I need a whole lot more? Do I need 50 to 100? So the question is, how do I get from 1 or 5 to 50 to 100? Okay, and that's that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you get to that number? And then what do you do with those, the 50 to 100? What do you do with those at that point? There are some seats up front. If you'd like to come on up, feel free. It's okay. We don't bite hard, at least. Okay, so, it was very important, and that was one of the things that I noticed. I attended, and actually I think we both attended a lot of the same groups, and we always noticed that as we went to the groups, we talked about networking, and we talked about talked about resumes, we talked about LinkedIn, and we got a lot of that information, but nobody really talked about how do I identify these target companies and find people in these target companies. There wasn't a lot of discussion going on at the time. Okay, there may be a whole lot more now happening, but as it was back then, there really wasn't a lot of things happening at that point. And so we, how do I help myself? I want to be proactive and go after it. And so how do I find these target companies? And my accountability group looked at me and goes, go to the library. What? Go to the library. Well, okay, what do you mean by that? Well, in the library, they've got a tool. And that tool back then was called Reference USA. Now it's called Data Axle Reference Solutions. You may hear it just Reference Solutions. You may hear Data Axle Reference Solutions. And some libraries haven't updated their files in 2 or 3 years. And it still says Reference USA. But this tool is the tool that my accountability group said, you got to go to the library, get your library card, and start using. I said, okay, great, I'll do it. Week 1 went by. I left my accountability group, and what did I do? I went right back to doing the things the way I always did them before and got the same results, because week 2 came up, got the same insistence by our accountability group. Hey, you need to go to the library, get your library card, and then go learn about reference solutions. Okay, I can do that. Week 3 came around, still hadn't gone to the library. And Kip was part of the accountability group that he and I were both part of that same group. And they said, you need to go to the library, get your library card, and go use reference solutions. And I looked at Kip, and Kip looked at me, and I go, what are you doing right after this? And he goes, we're going to the library to get our library card. I said, exactly. So he and I both went to the library and got our library cards, and then asked the librarian to assist us in finding the tool and then opening it up and start using it. Okay, they didn't have a really big tutorial or anything like that, so they just said, make it happen. So we found out how to find our target companies, and my battery died. Perhaps.
So while you're trying to figure that out, is this a tool that libraries typically subscribe to, or something you need at your local library that you're?
Yes, most local libraries here will have the product. If for some reason your local library doesn't have it and they don't have a reciprocal agreement with the local library, for instance, Little Elm may not have it, but they have a reciprocal agreement with Frisco Connect, or Frisco rather, so you can join the Frisco library. If that doesn't work for you, the Houston, Texas library accepts all Texas comers. So you can just go ahead and get on the Houston library website, get a library card there, and you're all set. So, but your local library typically does have it, but it is, can we move on? All right.
Yep. So you can be proactive and go to the library and get your library card and then begin using this tool. And, of course, that figures. Okay. All yours.
All right, so once you figure out you got your library card and you want to use this tool to identify these different companies, the first question you're going to ask yourself is, what kind of company do I want to look for? Do I want to stay in the same industry like Blake was just talking about? Do I want to stay strictly in, property and casualty insurance, or do I want to branch out to financial services all throughout? Or am I sick and tired of the insurance industry altogether and I want to go, work in a machine shop? So you got to make those decisions. What kind of industry do you want to stay in? The one you've been working at, or do you want to migrate to a different one? So beyond that, what size? Some people have worked for giant companies like I have and Foster has and stuff like that, like IBM and stuff. Maybe you're tired of a giant company like that. You want something smaller. So what size company do you want to work at? And size can mean, like Mike was saying earlier, can mean 2 things: number of people or revenue. So, and this tool allows you to actually filter for both of those. And then, do you want to stay here in the DFW area, or are you open to relocation somewhere else? Because again, the tool will allow you to filter for that. So if you're whole family is out of Minneapolis or whatever, you can set the tool to search up there as well, because you're open to relocating up there, and that's perfectly fine. One thing we'll point out here is that this database does not address anything having to do with remote or hybrid employment. So it just doesn't go there. So you're going to have to actually, once you find the companies that you like, you're going to have to go into actually those companies and see if their job openings are either remote or not. So, all right. So business databases, those of you in the financial industry are very familiar with some of these, especially Dun & Bradstreet, who is now merged with Hoover's. So I'm sure you've been in that website before. A to Z is a competing product to Reference Solutions. So it's pretty much the same thing, but it's not, obviously it's a different product, so I'm not sure the navigation within that, but it's pretty much.
It's exactly the same as Reference Solutions. A to Z was developed by a former CEO of Reference Solutions. And he's still paying for the rights to Reference Solutions through A to Z. So he's little copyright infringement thing that happened there. So
Yeah, so, and by the way, I mean, these are just some of the wonderful things you can get through your local library. So beyond Reference Solutions we'll be talking about today, your local library obviously has access to data on Dun & Bradstreet and a myriad of other financial products that you'd have to pay to get access to. So another reason to join your local library.
now we talked about how can I find a library that has Reference Solutions. Okay, so if you have your library card right now, you can go to your local or call up your local library and ask them if they have access to Reference Solutions. To make it as easy as possible for this group and trying to keep it somewhat brief, we've got the Houston Library. If you go online and type in Google Houston Library Card online, if you Google that, you can sign up for your library card at the Houston Library as long as you live in the state of Texas. If you live in the state of Texas, they'll allow you to have your library card. I currently hold 3 library cards. One is from the Houston Library, which I double checked this morning. It's still live and in color, so you can still sign up for Houston Library. The other one I live in Plano, and Plano allows you without payment to use their tools. Now, some libraries want to charge you if you don't live in their area. They want to charge you money for that. As being unemployed, I don't want to spend I don't want to spend any money if I can help it. Okay, so Houston's free, online, from your house. It takes about 10 minutes to get it done. So you're more than welcome to do that. All you have to have is a Texas driver's license or a voter's registration card. Once you get it done, you can touch base with the librarian and ask them what's the URL or the connection to Reference Solutions, and they'll be able to show that to you. Okay, or they'll be able to provide you with the URL so that you can get online to Reference Solutions. Okay? Now, once you get into Reference Solutions, this is what it looks like. Okay, you open the file. Obviously, the first step is you have to put in your library card. But then after you get in and agree to the terms that they have, then at that point, here's the tool itself. It's the database that, if you take a look here on the right-hand side, it shows over 16 million verified businesses and 43 million unverified. Now, all the unverified business means is they have a call center, and they make 24 million calls a year out of the call center to verify the information in Reference Solutions. All the unverified means is we called them, and we called them again, and we called them a third time or something and couldn't get a hold of them, so they're now in the unverified group. Doesn't mean that there's not a good company in the unverified. It just means that their call center wasn't able to gain any information from them. But the verified companies, there's about a little over 16 million, almost 17 million verified companies in the file. that you can take a look at and that their call center has contacted. In addition, the thing that we focused on when we first started was the U.S. businesses. Okay, there are smaller files or sub-files that have healthcare, that have new businesses that are new in the last 2 years or 2 or 3 years. But they have smaller databases that are subsets of the database in the top left-hand corner, which is U.S. businesses. And that's the one that I normally used, or I would normally go to, because I want to take the big group and whittle it down to the target companies that I want to see. Okay, so I always focused on the U.S. businesses in the top left-hand corner. And if you look, when you open up the file, open up U.S. businesses, you get two choices. You get a quick search or you get an advanced search. And the quick search, you can type in a company name. For example, the reactive approach. Hey, I just filled out an application for this company. I'd like to look up information about that company. You can type the company name in there and do a quick search. Or if you want to, you can use additional filters. Additional filters is exactly the same as the tab in the top right-hand corner that says advanced search. You get additional filters, or you get to do a more advanced search on the types of companies you're looking for.
All right, so you made the decision you want to stay in the same industry as your previous company. So now we start with, let's say I used to work at IBM and I want to continue to work at IBM, or I worked at IBM in the past and I really like that company and I want to make sure that, you know, the offices or whatever is still around here where I used to work. So I just put in IBM and then click on view results. And then I start seeing everything, and some of you may not be able to see this, especially in the back, but it's got 283 results. And it's got everything with the letters I, B, or M in it. So it may not be just IBM Big Blue. It could be several companies in which have that terminology in there, those 3 letters in there. So this is where you start, you know, whittling down your results by using different filters and whatever. So you'll see here that we have, within IBM itself, we have several locations within the U.S. because all we did was put in IBM. We didn't put any kind of geographic parameters on here as to where it is within the U.S. So you came up with Alabama, Arkansas, you know, Arizona, California. So we're all over the place on that particular search right there. So we want to narrow it down. So now we're going to narrow it down by Texas, because I know they have a location here in Texas that I recall from being there before. That's the one I'm after. So you put in your filter, and now all the locations you're seeing, it's down from 283 to 24. And now everything is here in Texas. Now, that is Texas, which means you're seeing up there things like Grapevine. You're also seeing El Paso. So you still haven't narrowed down, you know, to this area quite yet, but at least now we're down to 24, and you can see where the things are. So this location on Stemmons, that's the one that I was looking for. It's the one here in Dallas. I've been to that office before, worked at that office before, so that's where I want to go after. So go ahead and select that one. And now you'll see that those particular locations have, all of them have this little graphic at the end of it, like you're seeing there. If it's got an up arrow, that means that reports to a higher office. That means it's not the corporate headquarters. As you know, IBM is not here on Stemmons. So corporate headquarters, that means this location, that branch, office, whatever they're calling it, satellite, reports to somebody, some other office somewhere else, either in Texas or in the U.S. somewhere. If you see the other going down, the arrow going down, that means that that is the headquarters and it's got branches beneath it or satellite offices beneath it. So, all right, so we clicked on that particular location, and now you get this screen that gives you a little bit more information about that location. By the way, the thing on the left-hand side there with the arrows pointing, we kind of blown it up a little bit. That's what you're seeing on the right-hand side, same information. And those are just the quick links that they feel you may want to click on to get further information about IBM or that particular office. So you're seeing things like location, the job listings, the industry profile, the competitors report, and all that, and the job listings. Now, one thing to keep in mind about those job listings, Reference Solutions only goes out and searches for Indeed. So that doesn't mean these are the only jobs that IBM has open at this point in this location. It just means those are the ones posted on Indeed. So you want to write down this information and then go out to another source, LinkedIn, Monster, ZipRecruiter, whatever your favorite source is, and look for jobs there as well. Do not just think these are the only jobs listed here. These are just the only ones that Reference Solutions is tagging. So, and we also have the competitors report. This is wonderful because when I talk to people, I always tell them the same thing. All right, you work for this company, I'd be looking to their vendors, I'd be looking to their competitors, I'd be looking to anybody who services their equipment, if it applies. So this gives you at least some competitors here. And the one thing about this screen, though, when you bring up this competitors report, unfortunately, this is one of the few screens where you cannot download this information. This is going to be a screen capture, or it's going to be just printing it out, whatever your favorite method is. But this is one where you can't download to Excel. But anyway, these are now, the competitors are in the same, kind of business where IBM is, or whatever company it is you're looking up. So now you have some more targets. And many of you probably if you worked for IBM before, are familiar with some of these competitors, as you probably come across them. So these are just something that you can add to your list of companies that you can now go after. All right, so the industry profile, this is where it gets important, because now you're looking at two things that can become critical in this database. Your SIC code, Standard Industry Classification Code. Again, if you're in the financial industry, you probably know these codes very well. And NAICS code, which is a newer version of the SIC code. And these codes, basically, in the financial world, these are U.S. government issue, by the way, they tell you what kind of business this company does. And why is that important? If you're already looking up IBM, why would I care that? I already know what they do. Well, it's because you want to use those codes later to actually search some more. So this is a definition of those codes. Again, the SIC's been around forever, and the NAICS just came out in the late 90s. So again, if you're in the financial industry, I know I worked them constantly when I was in the insurance industry. I'm sure Blake and Brian are familiar with them as well. So, all right. So now we got your industry profile, and this is where I want you to write down your SIC code and your NAICS code. And computer services is what they have IBM under right now. And if any of you are familiar with IBM this day and age, they do a lot more than just computer services. In fact, probably consulting is the biggest part of their pie these days. So, but this is at least the computer services, NAICS code and all that. So, all right. So we have now, if I can see that screen, because I can't even see it. We have the keyword, we have the NAICS code that we used, and we're going to use that now to search. So we have the business type, and we're going to use the keyword, which is NAICS. And you can see we have also marked down what that NAICS code that we wrote down. We have that in there, and we're searching by that primary code. So once you search by that code, now you're going to get a list of locations, and now we start narrowing down our geography. Where do you want to look? Because now we're getting into detail. I'll read some of these off to you since you guys probably can't see it in the back. But on the left-hand side there, we're looking at geography. And to the right of that red box, we have all the cities. And we have everything from Dallas to Worthington Gardens to Danbury. I mean, we have, in other words, it's really, really, finely tuned now to the geography in this area. So if you live in Capel and you're okay driving to Plano or Frisco or Louisville or Flower Mound or whatever, you can just select those locations and it'll start filtering that out for you so you can see where there might be offices that you can easily drive to or at least attend. So now we selected Dallas to narrow that down, and we're going to click on view results in the top right there. And now we have all the companies. We have 21 results for that NAICS code in those cities that we have selected. In this case, we just selected Dallas, but now you can see we have 21 companies that all fit that same profile for that NAICS. And now you can start looking, going, okay, these are companies I need to look into now. Are these companies that like the gentleman was saying, that I think I want to work for? So you can start doing some research on them. So now we're going to select, look at the top two there, and we are going to select an Amdocs and see, okay, I want to do some more research on that company. Let's see what Reference Solutions has on them. So we're going to select that company. And now we can see a quick little profile on Amdocs and what they are, where they are. Basically the SIC code, which we already know, where the office is located, any jobs, again, it's saying no jobs, but that's just based on Indeed. You can still go out to LinkedIn or whatever as part of your further research into that company and see what else they've got offered. Now, one thing I will tell you about Reference Solutions, as Mike was saying, they have a staff that goes out and calls these companies and all that and verifies information. That doesn't mean that when they reached out to companies that the companies responded. So, like everything else in life, trust but verify. Go out to LinkedIn, go out to Google, wherever you feel comfortable going out to, or as Rusty's going to tell you later on, go out to ChatGPT and do some more research. So do your research on this, and just because it says that we have, no jobs, or this is where they're located, they could have moved. We don't know. So, but now the key here is you have the name of a company that you can do some research on and see if it meets a profile for some place you might want to work. All right.
Okay, so as I'm looking for a job and looking for target companies, why wouldn't I want to work at one of the better companies or best companies in the area? So I reached out and looked for, I Googled, what are the hot industries in DFW? And the feedback that I got, there's a few articles that are when you Google that, there's a few articles that talk about it. And Dallas is known for its technologies, financial services, and defense. And you think about it, that describes Dallas pretty well. In addition, if you think about Fort Worth is, of course, oil and gas. There's a lot of manufacturing in Fort Worth, or in the Fort Worth area, as well as there's aviation and avionics. There's a lot of those companies in the Fort Worth area. And so why not look for the types of companies that are plentiful in the area, especially if I'm a generic person. If I'm in IT, I could work in a lot of different locations. It doesn't have to be just for the same industry I was in before. The same thing is true with HR. HR can be in a lot of different industries. It doesn't have to be just the industry I was in before. Okay, so as you're looking, why not look for the ones that have the most opportunities? And as Google has said, reached out and Googled it, the hot companies in the DFW area are listed here. In addition, the other thing is, why not look at the best places to work? So, you go out and you see every city has a top 100 list, or a top, not necessarily top 100, but a top list. And maybe 3, 4, or 5, but they put out a list. I know Plano put out a little magazine that says, here's the top companies in the area. And so every area has top companies listed. I don't care if the company paid people to fill out good reviews for their company. That's okay. At least they're a top company, okay? That's a good place to start. Then you can do your research and figure out if that top company fits what you're looking for. And that's important. So now we're gonna take a look at some of the tools and how to filter with Reference Solutions. Now, the things that we did, I don't know if you're anything like me. If I'm learning a new tool, I want to learn some of the tricks or some of the things to say, what's the fast way to get the information that I need to have? Well, the first thing that we did is we focused on company name. of course, that's an immediate thing. And reactive wise, hey, I just filled out an application on this. Here's a company that I want to look for. So company name is a quick filter. In addition, business type. Now, with business type, I normally use the keyword or the SIC or NAICS code, that top line. The major industry group, you have to build your code, and it takes a little bit longer to do that. But I think keyword will help you. I was in HVAC industry. I would type in the keyword HVAC and see what pops up. Okay, so as you're looking at it, for those of you that are in healthcare, type in healthcare and see what comes up. Because it will automatically give you some choices, and then you can look at those listings or those industry groups and make a decision on which one you want to use. Geography, very important. I talked with a company that was in Fort Worth. I live in Plano. It's about an hour and a half drive during rush hour to get to and to get from that company. And so, I looked at that and we talked for a little while, and the only way I could conceivably do that was to get an apartment and then come home on the weekends or something like that. And that it just doesn't work out that well it didn't work out that well for me trying to do something like that. Or it wasn't appealing for me to do that. So recognize geography-wise, people aren't working from home as much as they used to. Employers are asking you to come back to work at the office in general. Now, they may be some are more flexible than others, and you need to find the ones that fit the style that you have and what you're looking for, okay? But geography is important. Because you may want to, I only want to go no more than 20 miles from my house or 15 miles from my house, something like that. And you can kind of pick the cities, as Pete said earlier, you can pick the cities that you would conceivably work in, okay? And then business size, we talked about business size being the number of employees or the sales volume that they had. Okay, so either one of those, that will help you narrow down the size. Me personally, I've worked for a couple of top 500 companies, and now, perhaps I want to work for a smaller company because they would value all the experience that I bring to the table. A top 500 company is looking for me to do that job and that job only, and less at expanding to a lot of different jobs. So focus on the size of company that you want, and also a large company may not accept me because my hair is starting to thin, and they may be looking for somebody that's out of college, maybe 10 years or 15 years. They may not be looking for somebody that's been out of college more than 15 years. Okay, then ownership. Ownership is important as well. Think about it, okay? If the owners are from South Korea, do they have the same culture that we do? No. Okay, I went to work for a company in Oklahoma City, and that company was, the parent company was in Sweden. And so their culture is different and their philosophies are different than in the United States. So knowing about the ownership may be beneficial to you to do a little research and understand, business philosophies or philosophies of people that are from other countries. And I would encourage you, like Toyota, or if you were, or Kubota as an example, if you were wanting to work for either one of those companies, to learn what cultures that they stress. And understand that, so that you can respond in a manner that they're looking for, okay, and provide them. If they ask you to do something, does that mean that you have a month to do it, or do you have, is that supposed to be done in the next hour? And culture may help you understand that. So ownership is important. Also, private and public. Private companies don't share information. Public companies do. Okay, they're required to provide a certain amount of information. So as it is, when you look at it, if it's a private company, you're not going to get as much information about that company as you would if it was a public company. And that brings you to the list of your target companies. Okay? Now, if I'm doing my advanced search, we'll give you an example of an advanced search right here. First off, the red box is surrounded, there's a little check mark on there, and that check mark is the verified. The top line is the verified. The next one down is unverified. You can check both of those. If you do that, you're going to get about 70 million businesses in the United States that you could research. I prefer to use the ones that are verified because they answered the phone, they answered the questions. Okay, that's me personally. It doesn't mean that there aren't good companies out there in the unverified sections. Okay, and notice that there's almost 17 million companies in the verified section. In addition, I would encourage you to use keyword or SIC or NAICS. Keyword, again, like I said, HVAC. If I typed in HVAC, I could bring up a bunch of companies that are involved in HVAC or air conditioning, okay, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, okay. In this case, what I did is I said, let's do healthcare. So we typed in, we checked the box for keyword, and then typed in healthcare, okay, and it says, okay, we're going to focus on healthcare management. The thing that pops up, if you notice, there's a list of healthcare that pops up, okay, or companies or the industries under healthcare. I said, let's just, at random, let's choose healthcare management, and I selected that. I updated my count, and when I did that, we've got 4,000 companies in the United States that are healthcare management. From there, went in and said, okay, we need to narrow it down to a specific city or cities. And what I did is I went in and said, let's do cities. And I did Plano, Texas. In Plano, Texas, there are 13 companies that are healthcare management. And then I hit view results. When I hit view results, here's a list of the 13 companies that pop up. Okay, and you can take a look at and find out information about each and every one of those companies. And you can you can copy that information. Unlike the competitors report where you had to cut and paste or do a picture of the file, in this case what you can do is along the top there's this blue bar, and that blue bar allows you to make selections. If you want to download that information, you go in and you hit download. And what pops up next is that screen. And you say, I want to download this information and download those 13 companies so I have the information. The thing that I do next is I use Excel a lot. I don't know, some of you may be data analysts or may be comfortable with comma delimited. And if comma delimited is more used by data analysts, I believe, okay? But they say, and Reference Solutions says, this is the most popular. For me, I've used Excel a lot, and I'm more familiar with Excel. That being the case, I choose Excel to download the information rather than comma delimited. It's up to you, however you want the information presented to you, you're more than welcome to make a choice. Again, I use Excel, and I would encourage you, if you're familiar with Excel, take advantage of using Excel. Okay, then you come down to the next tab, and step 2 is what information do I select? Do I select the summary, the detailed, or the custom? Encourage you as you start out to start using the summary. Okay, if you choose the detail, you will get 10,000 lines on an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, it will just keep on going to to triple, quadruple Z. Okay, it just goes forever. Okay, so would encourage you to select summary, and it limits down the information that you're going to get. Okay, so you don't get all the information that you're going to see on that particular company. You get a limited amount, and it's mostly the most important information. So that's the art of filtering. We talked about, getting the company name, going to the business type and focusing. I said I use keyword more than anything else. In addition, the geography, that's very important, especially if you want to find a company that's close to where you live today or you don't want to have to move. In addition, you've got business size. You make a decision about how big a company do I want to work for, okay? Or how big a company is the company looking for somebody with my skills, and how much runway do I have with the company, and they're looking to see that as well. As they're reviewing what you're doing. Runway means how many more years am I going to be able to work for the company, and am I going to be able to keep on going up in the organization. In addition, ownership, public or private company, and then foreign company as well. That's important. For those of you that are looking for nonprofits, you'll find a nonprofit by going into the keyword. Type in nonprofit. Okay, you won't find it in the ownership area. You go to the nonprofit and type in, you go to the keyword and type in nonprofit, and that'll help you there. And that's the art of filtering. Okay, so now you've learned a little bit about filtering with the tool. In addition, you can, we've talked about how to use this tool to identify your list of target companies. Now you can get the information on those companies and learn more detail about it, and utilize this information to develop questions that you can use for either informational interviewing or a sit down with somebody that works at the company, or for your actual interview. Because they always talk about you want to have your list of questions developed for your interview. This tool will assist you with that process. Okay, now we have an opportunity to do a live demonstration. Let's see. I need to slide this over, don't I? Yeah, thank you.
Quiet. I guess we are in church.
Okay, abracadabra, is that how that works? Okay. All right, so I'm in Plano right now. I'm online with the Plano Library, and I went in before the meeting started and signed in. I gave them my library card, and agreed to the terms that they have. There are some terms for using this tool. Okay, I agreed to the terms, hit the check mark, up pops this screen. Okay, and again, we talked about the tool. If you look at the databases, these databases right here, the top left-hand corner here, that's the big file. That's the U.S. databases file, and that's the one we use the most. But if you so desire, if you're looking for new businesses, some people are looking for companies that haven't been around that long and that they can provide additional resource to help. And new businesses is one of the databases they could use. In addition, if you're in healthcare, there's a list of physicians and dentists. Okay. So you can reach out and take a look at the various different groups in healthcare. Okay. As it is, I focus on, when I use it, I'll again like to use the big file so I can get it all encompassing and bring it all together, and then whittle it down using the filters and bringing it down to the specific industry or the things I'm looking for. So I prefer to keep it. I prefer to keep it in the U.S. businesses. Choose however you want to use the file. It doesn't matter, okay? Or whatever file you want to use. That doesn't matter. Okay. So when I open up new businesses, there's either quick search or advanced search. All right. Industries. Somebody want to call out an industry? Phone company?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Telecom? Okay.
That'll work too.
Let's look at telecom. So I want to go to an advanced search.
Hold that way tight.
Yeah, that would be great.
That can be Vanna.
It's spinning. There we
Oh,
go.
your computer, not you. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I want to use keyword, and the keyword
CenturyLink.
is, no, we want to start out with telecom. You like my style of typing? I only use this when I'm up, yeah. Okay, so which telecom do you want to use or select? Do you want telecommunications companies? Do you want engineers? Do you want equipment systems? Engineers, okay. Let's choose engineers. Okay, and you notice down here, thank you, Pete. You notice telecommunications engineers is located right here. Okay, now, if you want to repeat this in the future, I would write down this number. Take advantage of this number and write it down so that you know what industry type is, and you can come back to it later. So you can type in the number, it's 87 something, and I can't see it because it's also not on my screen at this point. But you've got this information. If I update the count, there are 25,000 telecom engineer companies in the United States. Okay, so we then want to narrow it down to geography, right? And what cities do we want to work in?
Plano, Richardson.
Let's see, where's geography? There it is. So I'm at geography, and you said Richardson?
Yeah. There's probably a few there.
Okay, Richardson, hopefully that's what it says. Richardson, Texas, there's one.
Yep.
All right, you said Plano?
Yep.
And that's Plano, Texas. Anywhere else?
Carrollton.
Carrollton. Two L's, two R's?
Yep.
Okay.
CALL.
Okay, Carrollton.
Yep.
And there's Carrollton. All right, so we're going to update the count. We're now at 67.
Yep.
That's a list. Thank you, sir. That's a list that you could use, and you can start doing research on those companies now. So from a list of 67 companies, what I would do is I would immediately go back and say, okay, that looks like a good list. Let's take a look at it. Let's view the results. So I click on that green box up there, and up pops the list of companies. Then at that point, what I do is I want to download this so I have this file and I can begin looking at those companies. So I hit download. Okay, excuse me. Let's see. Check the box. There we go. I checked all the boxes so that I got the entire list. And then I hit download. And then it asks either comma delimited, Excel, or et cetera. I use Excel again, and I would use summary, and then I would hit enter, and that would bring in a file and provide me with that list. Okay, now, do I work with all 67 of those? Do I work with all 67 at one time? No. What do I do? Okay, what I would do is I would look at the list and say, okay, here are 2 or 3 of those companies that I want to focus on this week and maybe next week. Okay? Write those 3 down as my target companies for this week or next week. You can share those companies with other people here and see if anybody has any connections at those companies, so that you can then set up what we call an informational interview or a chat with those people. Okay, an opportunity to talk and learn more about the company. And so if they know somebody that works at those companies, or if you know somebody that works at those companies, set something up where you can do, have a coffee with somebody. Hey, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. I really don't have 2 hours to go do all that, even though it may only be 20 or 30 minutes. If you think about all the time that's involved in the process, okay, I've got to shut my computer down. I've got to go down to my car. I get in my car, I go drive over to the coffee shop. Now that's 15, 20 minutes or so. I then sit down with you, we talk for 30, 40 minutes, okay, and then I got to go back to my office and then start my computer back up, get that going. So at that point, you're an hour and a half to 2 hours in. People may not want to share an hour and a half, 2 hours with you. If that's the case, Zoom, okay, or FaceTime, okay, or a phone call, something like that to assist you with having a call with that person, and so that you can be aware of their time, and you don't use up all of their time. Make sense? Okay. That is how we use reference solutions. Now, if I made a mistake in here, I can step back and start over. Just clean slate. I can just go in and go new search and start over. It doesn't matter. If you make a mistake, who cares? Start a new list. I have 84 HVAC companies in my list. And at first, one time I had 2. I made a mistake somewhere. It didn't work. So recognize that and take advantage of being able to reuse the tool. Yeah, let me go back to, yep.
All right, so again, the highlights here, most important, that wonderful 4-letter word, free, as long as you get to your library. Fairly easy to use. I mean, you're gonna, not go around in there, put in some keywords, and you'll figure out how to navigate and get down to where you want to get down to. And then best practice, identify your target companies. And this is great for, like Mike was saying, your informational interviews. That's when you reach out to your network or somebody like Mike, myself, Foster, whoever. Hey, can you connect me to so-and-so because, Sally's got a wonderful contact over there. Can you connect me to Sally? I can have a conversation with her. Wonderful. We do that all the time. And Sally and I did that yesterday. So make sure you use that for your interview process down the road. Is it working?
It worked.
All right. Good.
Okay, so get your library card. It's free. That's the key part. Okay, and by the way, this is a call to action. Okay, and if you're anything like me, 3 weeks from now, you still haven't gotten your library card. Okay. So call to action, when you get done today, I don't know how many of you have appointments, but if you don't have an appointment, touch base with if you have your library card, call your library and ask them, okay? Ask them if they have access to this tool. If not, go online, get your library card from Houston. Houston Online Library Card. 10 minutes, you'll have your card, and you can ask the person, they'll bring up a chat, and you can ask them, how do I get to Reference Solutions? Okay? So get your library card, and you can have access 24/7 from your house. Sign on to Reference Solutions. Get in. Play with it. Okay? It's not that hard. It's just a file. Okay? If you come up, no results. I've come up with that a couple times. No results. Even this morning. This morning I came up with no results. I go, okay, so I narrowed it down too much. But, okay, that's going to happen. Start over or step back and redo your search. It's not a big deal. Okay? And next time you come here, 2 target companies. We want you to have 2 target companies that you share with people that you're interacting with. Hi, my name is Mike Ray. I'm a VP Director of Marketing and Product Management. My 2 target companies are Ream and Kubota. And, my value statement is product transformation, customer satisfaction, company results, Mike Ray. Okay, so you just bring in your target companies and share that. That way, other people, as they practice hope, hey, I've got a connection at one of those 2 companies. Great, I can help you out. But bring those 2 target companies to the next meeting, okay? And it's not just to this meeting, because that's a month away. There's a lot of meetings. There's South Lake Focus Group on Thursday that we all attend. And Jeff's got one on Friday, right? There's a lot of groups that are coming up that you could share that information using this tool and identifying those target companies. What questions do you have?
My library only has... Good morning. And thank you for the presentation. My library has A to Z, but Reference Solutions seems to have much richer data and querying capabilities. Do you have any experience with A to Z as well?
Again, A to Z was developed by a former CEO of Reference Solutions. It's a similar process. I don't think it's as big as Reference Solutions is. That being the case, I would encourage you to go to Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah, just from your house, sign on in Houston, and get your library card from Houston.
It's probably the best thing to do. Where do you live? What city? Capel. Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, Mike, we're running a little short on time, but besides what you've covered on Reference Solutions, that's just the beginning, right? You can get a lot of details about the company, the personnel at the company, right? Who the CEO is, all the C-level people, especially in public companies. So you can do a lot more, you can dig a lot deeper into a specific company once you've called it up. Am I correct, or am I?
Yeah, this is just a list to get you started with your research into those companies.
Right.
Absolutely. You're going to LinkedIn, you're going to the company website, you're going to Google, you're going to, as Rusty will tell you, you can use ChatGPT. So
Right.
we'll be able to do all that. This is just, where do I start looking? This
Okay.
is a list of companies.
Okay, John, to your point, here's I'm going to quickly run through these.
We're actually out of time.
Are we?
Yeah,
Okay.
we are. We're
All
out
right,
of
never
time.
mind. I won't do that then.
So, okay.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Frank Martin. This is great. I've been using Google and ChatGPT, but this is going to be a good resource. But quick question. After, Mike, you said you love Excel. But after you're done downloading all this information, do you manage all of this in Excel, or have you found another way, a CRM or something that to utilize?
I just use it as Excel. I'm just a basic user. I'll grab a company name, And then I might make another file, but as it is, I'll focus just on using Excel to provide the information. Okay.
Just add the columns for things that are important to you, and you're all set. Yes, Rusty?
Yes.
Mike, Pete, thanks again. I'm a heavy user. Remind me, one thing that I think that I've found is when you create the list, there is a finite number that they allow you to download. It's something like 100 or 150 companies at one time.
Yeah, that was one of the terms and conditions that are in there. Because this is free through the library, they won't allow you to use it commercially. So you're limited to 250 companies that you can download at a time. Okay, so ideally I'm in marketing and I go, hey, I got this new tool and I can go to the library and I can use it for free. Well, it's not supposed to be used for business, for you to do your business through the local library. That's part of the terms and conditions. They want you to buy their services. And it's $10,000 or more for a company to purchase the tool or access to the tool, and that's every year. So, yep, good point.
All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up since we've got a break coming where you guys can go mix and mingle with the recruiters.
First of all, I want to thank Foster. I want to thank Pete. I want to thank John for inviting me to speak today. It's great to be in front of a live group. I've only ever done this in a Zoom format. So I want to begin by apologizing because we've got teeny tiny screens here and some of the things I'm going to show you are pretty small, but I'll ask you to kind of use your imagination. Before we dive in, a little bit of background on me. I'm actually a lot like you. I am a guy that is in job search transition. I am a former VP of marketing who lost my job about 15 months ago, and I've been in search since. And I've been looking for tools like you that are going to get me to the finish line as fast as possible. The other thing you need to know about my marketing background is I've worked for large companies that have always asked me to kind of look at the future and try and understand what are the trends and technologies that are going to be shaping the way consumers are interacting with brands and shaping their behaviors. And this is one of those step changes that I think I felt was really going to be changing my next job that I go into, the way that I work, and importantly, as a leader, the way that my employees are going to be working in the future. So I really felt out of an instinct for survival that I needed to understand this a little bit better. You need to know that this presentation never existed more than 6 weeks ago. That's how young it is. That's how new this technology is. And the genesis of it was, as I was learning, I was looking for resources and reached out to another executive networking group. And I spoke to the leader and said, I want to learn more. Is there anything out there, anyone speaking about this? And he said, no, there's not. Tell me what you're doing, Rusty. And so as I shared some of the applications that I was finding, he said, you need to come back next week and share this with our group. So it started then. I've now done about 4 to 5 presentations just in the last 5 weeks, and it's great to be here with you today. This presentation actually is really geared for newbies, people who maybe have not logged on to ChatGPT, or if you're maybe a new to intermediate user, you've dabbled in it a little bit, but you really want to try and understand how to use it and implement some of the techniques a little bit more. Today, I'm going to demonstrate some of the practical applications, but we're also going to talk about some of the limitations that you need to be aware of in your job search. Good to know what ChatGPT does really well, but also important to understand what some of its opportunity areas are, as they say in the corporate world. We're going to also talk about tips for prompt creation. Being able to write and craft a good prompt is going to be important for you. The better you're able to do it, the better output you're going to get. Doesn't mean you have to be a programmer. It just means you have to understand how the system responds. But don't worry, at the end of the day, I'm actually going to be providing you with a prompt template that you're going to be able to download from the Frisco Connect website. You're going to be able to cut and paste, drop in your own information, and get going with the technology immediately. So one thing that I always say is that this is a big caveat. The technology is changing so quickly that the experience that you may have or interacting with ChatGPT or any of the chatbots that are out there may be different than what you're seeing today. I've had to go back every week to update this presentation because it's changing so rapidly. So chatbots, a new thing? Well, not really. In fact, they've been around since the 1960s. The first ones came out of MIT in 1966, but we haven't really thought much about them. Maybe you remember a little computer called Deep Blue from IBM that beat a grand chess champion back in the 90s. But for the most part, AI has been flying under the radar screen, and we've been hearing a lot more about technologies like blockchain and the metaverse. Well, that's until fairly recently, when all of a sudden there was this explosion of what we call large language models. And if we look back at 2021, there were actually more than 24 different large language models that were in development around the world. You might see some logos up there that you recognize from Google and Meta, but you can see that this race is also happening not just in the United States, but it's also happening in places like China, South Korea, and Canada as well. So all these companies have been racing, but like many brands, the one that gets most known is the one that's first to market, which is a company called ChatGPT, which officially launched to the public forum in November of last year. Developers have been working with this even before that time, but the public, students, workers like us, we've been able to access it since November. So I thought, we should probably begin with a definition of what ChatGPT is. So I sat down with ChatGPT and interviewed it. And I asked ChatGPT to tell me who it is and what it does. And now I know this is a little bit small, but the definition is ChatGPT uses artificial intelligence and natural language processing to generate human-like responses to user inputs, based on patterns and associations learned from vast amounts of text data. The model consists of multiple layers of neural networks that process and generate text with the ability to adapt and improve over time through continued training. So that's pretty good. Now, if I hadn't asked ChatGPT to give me simple language and to describe itself in 3 sentences or less, it probably would have given me a small phone book. So one of the things is important is how you ask ChatGPT for information, and we're going to dive into that more deeply. The first thing you need to know is, like any great personal assistant, ChatGPT is not perfect. And so when you go to their landing page, you're actually going to see the 3 warnings or, quote, limitations that are on the screen up here. The first one is that it may occasionally generate incorrect information. So remember, ChatGPT has really been trained on the depth and the breadth of the internet. And we know how accurate all of the internet is these days, right? So garbage in, garbage out is a little bit of the issue that ChatGPT and all of these bots are dealing with. If they've been trained on bad information, they can regurgitate bad information. The second thing that it says here is it may occasionally produce harmful instructions or biased content. So there's this great story about an editor for the New York Times who was a beta tester for Microsoft Bing. And as he was interacting with the chatbot, and they were getting into this deep conversation, the chatbot suddenly started to tell him that his wife was not really good for him, that she was not faithful, that he should be thinking about leaving his wife and starting a relationship with the chatbot. So obviously, Microsoft panicked because this is not what they had intended to happen with the chatbot. So subsequently, they put a lot of limits on what Bing could do, and they've been gradually removing those limits as it continues to learn. The other very, very important thing is that it has limited knowledge of the world and any world events after 2021. In fact, it's trained on information up to September of 2021. There is a new version of GPT or ChatGPT that's out there called ChatGPT-4. And that is not only trained on the historical information, but it has the ability to search the internet for more current information. I will say, having used it, it is still not perfect. You still trust but verify, as we were talking about earlier. You definitely need to be doing that. So how do you get to ChatGPT? Well, you can just Google it, right? And it will take you to OpenAI's website. You can sign up for a free account. You can sign up with your Google account, and it costs you nothing to use it. But you know what? Everybody is using it, and it's one of those technologies where we've never seen adoption like what we're seeing right now. And just for reference, if you think about when Netflix started back in 2009, any idea how long it took Netflix to get to 1 million users? 3.5 years. 3.5 years to get to 1 million users. Facebook, the largest platform in the world, it took them 10 months to get to 1 million users. ChatGPT, 5 days. And not only that, but in February alone, it had more than 1 billion visits to the website, which is creating a very different kind of problem now for OpenAI, because how do they scale up for something that's got that kind of massive growth? And so you may occasionally experience capacity issues when you go to visit ChatGPT. You might not always be able to get onto the system, or it might be running a little bit slow. So the two platforms I'm going to talk about today are one from Microsoft Bing, and the other is ChatGPT. And the reason that I'm doing that is because they're free. So for people doing job search, there's no cost for you to use either of these platforms. They also both use the OpenAI GPT software. So they're working on a similar platform, but there are some differences that let's talk about a little bit right now. So first of all, Microsoft was an early investor in OpenAI. And because of that, they actually got access to the technology, and they have integrated it into their web browser, which is Microsoft Bing. So you do have to download a specific web browser to use Bing. The great thing about it is you can do your input either via voice, like you would Siri or Alexa, or you can type it in as text. It utilizes the OpenAI GPT-4 software, which is the latest software that is out there. That, again, allows you to get that historical information pre-2021 and also some of the more contemporary internet searches. There's a word limit, though, of 25,000 words. I don't think you're ever going to have a problem with that. Maybe if you're doing a doctoral dissertation and asking it to kind of summarize the dissertation for you, but otherwise, I haven't found that to be a problem. It does have a limited question depth, and what I mean by that is, remember that conversation that the New York Times editor had. He was being told to divorce his wife. Well, what happened is Microsoft came in and said, we want to make sure we don't get into that same situation again. So they put a limit on how deep in terms of a question you can go. So if you start a subject and you in the chat box are going back and forth, you can go about 20 deep. Truthfully, you're not going to find that to be much of a limiter for you. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever gone 20 questions deep. It does require that you download a Microsoft Edge browser. So if you're an Apple user, you might not, have that on your ecosystem. One fantastic thing is it can also generate images. So it has a creative mode that you can go into. And let's say you're doing a PowerPoint presentation and you want to create an image of a purple squirrel with a gold tooth riding a motorcycle up the Eiffel Tower. You can create that kind of image. Basically, if you can articulate it in a text, it will interpret it and try and do that for you. Now, one thing they talk about with GPT-4 and for Microsoft Bing is that it was given the bar exam and that it was able to pass the bar in the top 10%, which means that it's definitely smarter than I am. So let's talk about its older cousin here, which is ChatGPT. As I mentioned, launched in November of last year. Text input only, so you can't talk to it just yet. It utilizes OpenAI's GPT 3.5 software, which is really not that old. It was just introduced late January, early February of this year. You can get GPT-4, but you have to pay for that, and that's called GPT Plus, I believe. It's $20 a month if you want access to that. Now, if you're using the 3 version, what that means is you're getting the historical information pre-September 2021, and we'll see what that means when we get into some of the examples that I show you. Now, you also have a word input limit of 3,000, so it's a bit smaller than where Bing is right now. Again, for the most part, I'm not finding 3,000 to be a big limiter for us. Unlimited question depth, so it doesn't stop you when you're going back and forth with the chatbot at 20 questions like Bing does. And the great thing I love about it is it's accessible from any browser. You can use it on your phone, you can use it on your iPad, you can use it on your desktop. So if you're at work and you're really concerned about accessing ChatGPT from the company server, you can go on your phone and perhaps not have the same kind of issues or challenges that you would have. It does have occasional site capacity issues, again, with 1 billion users logging in February. Especially if you're on during a weekday, during the morning hours, it gets really crowded on there. It also passed the bar, but this time it was in the lowest 10%, not in the top 10%, which means it's still smarter than I am. So the big question is, so Rusty, how can I use that? And I love that today's setup was we had Mike and Pete talking about reference solution, because some of the things we're gonna look at here are going to be really a great complement to what they're doing. And so let's start talking with research, right? We talked about building the company list, and maybe you've got that company list already, but you want to dive in a little bit deeper. Well, you can ask ChatGPT to act as a corporate researcher for you. And it looks a little something like this. I created a prompt, and the prompt says, I want you to act as a corporate researcher. Tell me about the company, blank. For example, how many employees do they have? How much capital have they raised? What is their vision and mission? Who is their CEO? Provide the information in bullet points. So a couple things I want to talk about in creating the prompt here. First of all, I started off telling ChatGPT how I wanted it to act, and that's important. If you wanted to act as a writer, or if you wanted to act as a researcher, or if you wanted to act as a career coach, always great to start off and set that sort of expectation. Then I gave it sort of the information on the company that I wanted, and then I gave it examples. I said, for example, how many employees do they have? How much capital, etc. And so what I'm hoping when I get my answer is that I'm going to see my examples, but I'm also going to see some things that are also like my examples that are in there. And then the last sentence, I said, provide the information in bullet points. So I told it the format that I wanted to give the output. So let's see what it did. I used my former company. I worked for Mary Kay, so I felt pretty comfortable about going in and validating the information. So it came back here, and I know this is too small for all of you to read, but there's about 8 different bullet points. So it followed the format that I said. And it's telling me, Mary Kay is privately owned, direct selling company, cosmetics, founded 1963, Dallas, Texas, currently in Addison, 40 countries, 3.5 independent beauty consultants. And as I go down the bullet point list, it's pretty darn good. The last bullet point on here is Mary Kay's CEO is David Hall. He has been CEO since 2006. So I see my former Mary Kay colleague, Shannon, out there smiling because she knows that that's not the latest information. And, excuse me. And so what happened here is David Hall retired in November of 2022. And ChatGPT didn't catch that because its data ended in September of 2021. And so those are things when you're dealing with information that's happening after September 21 that you could run into. So overall, I'm going to kind of give ChatGPT a B plus on this one. Mary Kay is a privately held company, And so it was hard to get financial information, but it went out to a Forbes magazine article and it brought that in for reference. Now, maybe you are looking at a public company and what you'd like to do is track that public company's sales history and their profit. Well, you can ask ChatGPT to do that for you as well. So here's a prompt that I gave ChatGPT. I asked it to create a table comparing the following companies, Volkswagen, Toyota, and Tesla. Show historic sales at the evolution from 2018 to 2021 in US dollars. And I did this because I wanted to see what happened to them during the pandemic. Include a column to show the gross margin and percent evolution. I also added this in because I wanted to see what happened to the profit during the pandemic. And so let's see what ChatGPT came back with. Gosh, here they've given me all the companies. I've got Volkswagen, Tesla, Toyota, all on the left-hand side there. And you may be looking at this and saying, gosh, that looks a lot like an Excel table. Well, the cool thing is you can cut and paste that directly into an Excel table. In fact, you can tell ChatGPT that you want to create an Excel table to format, and it will just give you a button to push, and it will copy and paste everything for you. So you can build tables, you can build large chunks of data with this that you can then import. And like Mike said, you can use your Excel skills and manipulate that. Now, one thing, I asked for that data from 2018 to 2021, but remember that the data ended in September, and this has given me a full year number. Is it correct? No, it's not. So what ChatGPT wanted to do is it wanted to please me and wanted to give me information. So it went back and it looked at analyst reports and quarterly reports to see how these companies were doing in 2021, but then it just guessed at what the final number is. So if you're using any kind of numbers after 2021, there's a couple things that you need to be aware of. Actually, numbers in general. So first of all, always a great suggestion after you run your query or your prompt to ask ChatGPT, what are your sources? And it's going to give you an answer. And if it gives you an answer like, I was able to pull this information from various annual reports, 10Ks, shareholder meeting notes, you know that you're probably getting some pretty good information. If it comes back, however, and says, as an AI model, I'm not able to build this information, and I've taken my best guess at it based on the available information on the internet, then that's probably a red flag that you want to be aware of. Now, the second thing is, after you run your prompt, there's a little button at the very bottom that says, regenerate response. And this is actually one of my favorite buttons that's out there. And so what I suggest is, look at the numbers that it's given you and then hit regenerate response. And if it comes back and gives you the same numbers again, that's also a good sign, because that means it's probably not guessing. If it was guessing, it would make a slightly different guess the second time around. Now, there can be reasons why it does give you different numbers. Sometimes it might be using a different foreign exchange rate. For instance, we had Volkswagen, right, which is a European country on there, and they might have converted their annual report from euro to the US in slightly different, with a different Forex rate at the end of the day. But I highly suggest doing these two things when you're working with any kind of numbers. Now, another thing you might think about doing, so you've found the company, right? You've identified them. Now you're going to do a little bit of research. For those of us who've worked at the executive level or worked on strategy, a lot of us have seen something called a SWOT, right? Which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you can actually ask ChatGPT to create a SWOT for you. So here I said, ChatGPT, please create a SWOT in tabular form for JCPenney's, a company here in the DFW area. And so it came back, and I know, again, this is too small to read, but it's given me the 4 quadrants of a SWOT. I've got the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats. And now as I'm going into my interview preparation, With a headhunter or a corporate recruiter, I've got some sense of what do they feel they might be doing pretty well at, what maybe are some of the pain points that I can explore a little bit further. So for instance, here under one of the weaknesses, it's number one is struggles with declining sales and profitability. Well, maybe that's like a cue for me then to go in and do a little bit of a deeper dive, go look at their annual report or ask ChatGPT to look at their annual report to understand, is it a channel of business? Is it a geography? Is it a product category that they're seeing these kind of declines in? So a great starting point for your thinking, for your interview preparation. Another thing you might think about is using ChatGPT to help you with your personal branding. So many of us are going to get on these networking calls or going to these networking events. We're going to do our 30-second or 90-second elevator speech where we're describing ourselves to one another. But it's also really hard to remember everybody and really who they are and what they stand for. There's a couple of people that are great speakers here in DFW that I'd encourage you to listen to. One is Paula Calise, and Paula does a seminar called The Art of Hello, where she helps you to develop your personal branding statement. So in 10 words or less, you create something that's very memorable. But ChatGPT can also help you with that as well. So here's an example where I said, ChatGPT, pretend to be a career coach helping me to craft 5 creative and unique branding statements. The statements should begin with I am, I do, or I help statements. Each one should be less than 10 words and should be based on the following skill sets. And here's where I dropped in my skill sets, but where you would drop in your skill sets, the things, your superpowers, the things that make you really unique. And so ChatGPT came back, and again, I know it's really hard for you to read, but the first one it came back with, it was all right. It says, I am the marketing maven who creates buzz. Okay, that's not too bad. And so progressively, they're okay. I get to the bottom and I start to like them a little bit better. I am the white space whisperer finding untapped opportunities. But the last one I liked the most, and it's actually my personal branding statement now, which is, I do more than follow trends, I create them. And I knew that in my star stories, I could back that up. I could create a great dialogue around that branding statement. So you may be a super creative whiz, and this might not be a problem for you, but if you are struggling with the creative side, the language side of figuring out your personal brand, ChatGPT might be able to help. And by the way, guys, all of the prompts that I'm showing you right now, I see folks taking pictures, that's fantastic, but they're all gonna be in the worksheet that you'll be able to get at the end, so don't worry about that.
Rusty?
Yeah.
In addition to that, this presentation that you're doing right now will be posted on YouTube, on the Stonebriar Events channel, and they'll be able to see the slides because we're recording it. They'll be able to read the slides while
more.
you're speaking.
Awesome, fantastic.
And a link to that YouTube will also be on friscoconnect.org.
Fantastic. So another idea. So we talked about earlier when Mike and Pete were speaking about what if you're changing industries? Well, what if you need to do a little bit of research on the industry that you're going to? You can ask ChatGPT to do that. So you could, for instance, say, ChatGPT, tell me about the top 10 trends in the clean energy sector. And ChatGPT, first of all, will create those list of 10 trends that it is finding out there. But what's great then is you can go in and you can drill down and you can say, now ChatGPT, in your follow-up question, tell me about trend number 1, who are the lead competitors and what are the products that they're creating? So you can do a much deeper dive and become, more of a subject matter expert on, who are the guys that are moving and shaking the trends that are in your industry, especially if you're looking to make a change. Now, ChatGPT, a lot of people have talked about ChatGPT as a great writer, and we're going to talk about that for a minute. It can actually help you write cover letters or revise headlines in LinkedIn or your about statement. Here, I'm going to have ChatGPT write a cover letter based on a job description, and my resume. So it's going to combine the two different things and write the cover letter for me. So I said, ChatGPT, I want you to write a professional cover letter with a maximum length of 275 words. Please analyze the following job description. You insert it there. Please utilize the below resume to customize the cover letter to the job description, and you insert it there. So again, let's talk about the construction of this. I started off saying, I want you to write a professional cover letter. So I've given it sort of the style and the tone, and also the format. I've told it that it's a cover letter with a maximum length of 275 words. So I've given it a parameter. I don't want a phone book. I want it to be 275 words or less. And then I've given it two different examples to compare. I've given it my resume, I've given it the job description, and I've given it the instructions of what I want it to do with that. And so let's see, you're not going to be able to read this, but this is what ChatGPT came back with. And let me say that it's pretty darn good. It's probably better than I could write myself, but you may be looking at this on the tiny screen and saying, first of all, Rusty, I'm never writing a cover letter that's that long. Well, here's the great thing, is you can say to ChatGPT after you see the draft, it's too long. Cut it down by 50%, or make it 125 words instead of 275 words. And ChatGPT will automatically condense it. It will keep the most important parts and do it to the parameters that you've given it. Now, let's say you're reading it and you're like, you know, that language, it sounds a little bit too stuffy for me. Well, you can go in and you can change the style, the tone, and the voice. And one of the examples that I like to give is, go to ChatGPT, ask it to find the preamble to the Declaration of Independence, and then ask it to rewrite the Declaration of Independence in the voice of Barack Obama. And you will immediately see how it changes style, tone, and voice. And then ask it to write it in the voice of George Bush or Donald Trump. And you will have an immediate comparison of how it can move back and forth between these different styles. So one of the things that, you know, I'm hearing a lot about as a critique these days is, with everybody using ChatGPT, won't their cover letters start to all sound the same and have the same format? Yes, that's true, but that's why it's important to understand how you can adapt its style. In fact, you're going to be able to get ChatGPT to learn your style of your own writing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Before we leave this slide, the one thing I want to say is, again, it's not the perfect assistant. And so the problem that I ran into when I did this exercise was, in the job description, it said that the role required 10 years of experience. Well, I actually had 25 years of experience, but ChatGPT just put in that I had 10. So you always want a proof for that kind of information. ChatGPT also wants to make you sound pretty good, so you need to make sure that it's not stretching the truth a little bit about some of your job skills that are out there. But it gets you going with a great start, and then that's your opportunity to come in and tweak and personalize it and make it sound like Mike or Pete or Rusty or Shannon at the end of the day. So talking about teaching it your style, there's actually a prompt for that. So here I've asked ChatGPT to learn my writing style from the following content. And so I took a cover letter that I had written myself at some point in the past that I really liked, and I dropped it in. And it came back and it gave me this whole analysis on the left of my writing style. It says your writing style is professional and engaging and informative. You utilize a variety of sentence structures, yada, 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 yada. So it's done this whole technical analysis of how I write. And so now what I can do is a follow-up prompt that says, ChatGPT, utilize this above style and write a blank. You want to write a LinkedIn post that's in your style. You want to write a cover letter that's in your post. You want to write an email that's in your post. You can utilize your style, and ChatGPT will start to do that for you. Now, you need to go back to that prompt every time you want to do that. It's not going to necessarily remember you 5 days later, but it is a great tool. So a couple other things here. I'm not going to show you the prompt form, but they're actually in my prompt document. You can have ChatGPT interview you question by question. So you can give it a job description. It's going to start off, it's going to ask you an opening question, and then based on what your response is, it will craft the next question, and it will go back and forth with you. So you can start to practice. It's not the same as speaking, right, because you're typing, but you can start to have a thought process about it. You can also ask it to brainstorm common interview questions for your role or your industry. Now, many of us have been working on like those top 50 behavioral questions that are out there. You know, what's your greatest strength? What's your weakness? Have you dealt with a difficult boss? All of those things. But maybe you're in a specific functional area. Maybe you're a social media specialist, or maybe you're a CPA, or you're in program management, and you want functional questions for that area, where you can ask ChatGPT to create those questions for you, and it will give you a list. And I know I was talking with somebody earlier today who said, I actually implemented it, and it was great, and it was fantastic. Let's see. Okay, enough of the examples. Let's start about crafting a prompt. So it's only as good as the information that you ask it to do. And the image that I would like to give you is, imagine that you got a brand new intern at your company, and this person is super smart. They came out of an Ivy League school. They're eager to please, but you know what? They don't know your company. They don't know your brand. They don't know you. They don't know the style of your presentations. And so you really need to give them the right scope, the right context for them to be able to perform and deliver for you. So a few things for you to be thinking about, and some tips for writing really strong prompts. Start with the end in mind. You need to think about, what do I want this to look like when ChatGPT gives me the answer? So then you can start to back out of that and say, what is ChatGPT going to need to be able to fulfill that request, right? Because if you're very general and you're too short, it's going to give you something very general and perhaps not on target. You can use simple language, so you don't have to write a Shakespearean sonnet for it, right? The language can be very plain. And you can benefit from being very, very specific in that plain language. The one thing you want to do is avoid having multiple questions within a single prompt, because ChatGPT or Bing, they will get confused as to what is Rusty really looking for? What is the question that I have to answer at the end of the day? So you can give multiple instructions, but make sure you're not asking really multiple questions. Use examples. So you saw in some of the ones that I did earlier, I was feeding ChatGPT some examples for it to look at. And unless you're looking for a very specific slant on something, avoid any kind of leading questions. Because again, ChatGPT wants to please you. It wants to, give you exactly what you want. So if you start taking it down a road with a specific political leaning or whatever it might be, that's what you're going to get back out of the system. Very importantly, test and iterate. When you develop a prompt, your first prompt might not be exactly what you want. So go back, first of all, hit that regenerate response button to see if the second response is a little bit closer to it. But then go back and look at kind of the structure of your prompt. And there's a few things to think about to making sure it has the right context. You don't have to have all of these things in here, but normally having a couple of them will really help you. Have you directed it to the right industry? If it needs data to analyze, if you're asking it to analyze a spreadsheet, have you given it that information? Do you have a clear focus question, a clear topic or theme? Do you have constraints on it? For instance, I asked the cover letter to be 275 words. If you got something and it was way too long, maybe you need to put a constraint on there as well. Structure. Is it in the structure that you want? Is it a cover letter? Is it an Excel table? Is it bullet points? Is it an outline that you want it to give you? Key points or themes that you want to make sure it touches on that you really feel need to be incorporated. And any original text that you might need, that job description or the resume that you've got, it's going to need all of that along with editing instruction. So one thing I want to point out is, as you're creating all of these prompts, right now ChatGPT is using this to train the large language model going forward. And I find that great. In fact, all of my prompts that I've ever done are on the left-hand side, and so I can go back to them, and I don't have to rewrite them every time I do it. So that thing with the writing style, where it analyzed my writing style, well, I just go back to that prompt, and then I go in and edit it to change, whatever I want to create going forward. So that's fantastic, but I know a lot of people have privacy concerns as well. You now have the ability to go to settings, and you can either clear your history or you can completely turn them off. For any of you that have been using ChatGPT, if you do a clear and turn these off, know that those are going to stay in the queue for about 30 days before they disappear. This is a new feature that ChatGPT just added. So we've talked a lot about job search, but there's so many other areas that ChatGPT can help you in different parts of your life, whether it's creating menus or diets. I recently had a friend who was traveling to Paris on a business trip, and she had 3 hours before her first meeting, and she wanted to do a walking tour next to her hotel just to kind of see what was in the neighborhood. And I asked ChatGPT to create a 90-minute walking tour to visit these types of historical sites, create it point by point with time and distance, and it did all of that. And so she was able to do that, and it took her around in a circle and brought her back to her hotel, and she wanted to see architecture and historical insights, and so it took her to those types of places. But because we're here in Stonebriar Church, I'm going to share something that's perhaps a little bit more on the theme. Some of us may be teachers, and this can be a great tool for teachers who are building lesson plans. And so here's a prompt I created. I will be teaching a Bible study course to young adults age 18 to 25. The class will have 8 sessions. Each session will be approximately 45 minutes in length. Please create a course outline focusing on the Bible chapter of John, its key messages, and how it differs from the other books in the gospel. So you can start to see all of those different things that I was talking about in here. I've defined my target audience that's up there. I've told them it's a Bible study course. I've told them it's 8 sessions, 45 minutes in length. I've told it what chapter I wanted to focus on. I wanted to compare it and contrast it, and that's what it's going to do. And I know you can't see it, but it's done a 25,000-foot view of what I need to do, and it's broken it into those 8 different sessions, including an introduction and a conclusion. But here's the great thing is then once you've got that 25,000-foot view, you can go in and you can drill down, and you can say, now ChatGPT, create me a lesson plan for session number 1. And ChatGPT is going to come back and it's going to tell me, here are the materials you're going to use, here's how to do the introduction and the orientation, your opening lecture section, here's the scripture passages that you're going to use for the discussion group, and then, here's how you want to wrap up and do your conclusion. Now, not to say this is turning water into wine for everyone out there, but boy, I mean, in terms of giving you a basic framework instruction, for people that are teaching, whether it's Sunday school or whether you're teaching something else out there, this can be, something that gets you a great jump start. I mentioned that there's going to be a prompt that's available, so you're going to see all of these. You can kind of go into the example prompt, and anything in red is where you're going to insert your information. I also created a little bit of a report card because I tested all of these not only on ChatGPT and Bing, but I'm also a beta tester for Google Bard. Some of you may be using Bard out there, and so I wanted to see how it was functioning for that. And so you'll see that in some cases it performed better on one platform than the other, but they're all in there and available for you to use. Other resources, if you're interested in learning more about ChatGPT, so one of the free things on many of the public library systems is something called Udemy. Normally you pay for Udemy, but if you go through the public library system, you can also get that for free, and there, I think, are dozens of ChatGPT courses. They're not going to be geared towards job search necessarily, but they'll talk more about prompt creation and teach you some of those type of techniques. LinkedIn Learning, also available free through your library, so don't go out there and pay for it if you want it. Your library has it for free. A couple of YouTube channels, Matt Wolf, The AI Advantage, The AI Grid. That's really only if you want to go down the rabbit hole. And they're going to be talking about AI in general, not just ChatGPT. And then last but not least, there is a website, www.there'sanaIforthat.com. And that is a website where all of these new tools, because ChatGPT now has these APIs where companies can link their software to ChatGPT. And so there's all of these products that are being created. I counted more than 80 in the last 10 days. If you go into the search bar and just type job search, you can see all the ones that are coming out that are related to job search, from resume writing to job coaching and everything that's out there. So anyway, thank you very much. That's a link to my LinkedIn connection. Feel free to connect with me. If you do, please send me a personal invitation and mention kind of where we met. I do this like all the guys here, absolutely free. The one thing I would ask of you is if you run across a great prompt out there, send it to me. I know there's a few people that have done that already, but I want to test them and I want to integrate it in the presentation going forward so we can pay it forward to other folks as well. So with that, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
This is a general question on the fun side because you were saying, the different ways to use it. I was thinking, I'm taking a vacation in San Antonio over Christmas.
Yes.
Can I somehow ask it to choose, give them, these are the number of people that I'm going to have on my vacation, and this is how many rooms I need. Please find me the best house rental. Can it scour, or can I say?
It cannot.
Go to VRBO and find me my best.
It cannot, because remember, it is not connected to the internet right now. So, it probably is going to give you an answer that's, you can certainly try it, but it's going to give you probably an answer that says, as an AI, I'm only trained on information prior to 2021, and I can't access the internet to do that kind of behavior. So unfortunately, I think that's a case where if you're trying to book something commercially through a website, it might be able to give you some suggestions of where to stay. So you might think about, how do I change that to get to a location, or it may be able to find a list, but it won't be able to necessarily book or do anything transactional.
Okay, follow-up question. How long is it going to be before it does it?
The latest that I've heard is that the next evolution of ChatGPT, which will be GPT-5, is not going to come before the end of the year. Everyone's kind of trying to put the brakes on the next evolution and make sure they're doing it in the right way. What I do know is they are creating a ChatGPT for business that is going to hopefully alleviate some of the issues that big enterprise operations have. And what is possible that's going to happen is someone like VRBO or Airbnb is going to create an API that allows ChatGPT to talk with their system. And once they do that, then you'll be able to do those kind of things. Trevor.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I believe the ChatGPT 4, it allows you to insert links now. So you could say, rewrite this article.
Yes.
In my style, my tone, right? And it will read the article, whatever you put into it. So you can put links into it. So to her question about, looking for different, different properties or whatever your question was, if you fed it specific information, specific links in there, you may find that it could, I don't know.
Absolutely try it.
You can feed it links now, which you couldn't previously.
Exactly. It used to be you had to cut and paste everything into it. And again, that's with GPT-4. It's not with the free 3.5 version that you're going to get on ChatGPT. But if you're using the 4 version, you can insert links and things like that now. Yes.
Is that where Bing would become more useful since it's using ChatGPT?
Yes, although I have to say I've tested Bing and tried to get it to do some of the more recent search information, and I haven't been completely successful with it yet. In fact, you'll see in my report card, things that I thought it was going to do better with. So I showed you that example of looking up financial information. And what I expected was Bing was going to be able to nail it because it was going to be able to go into annual reports from 2021 and 2022. But at the end of the day, the data wasn't any better than the original ChatGPT when I went back and verified it. So again, trusts but verify with any of these things that you're doing, especially if it's involving data. Yes? Okay. Yeah. So unless it's got that API that's allowing it to talk, that may continue to be a barrier. Yes, ma'am. I'm imagine it's when GPT-5 comes out. I don't think they're retraining GPT-4 3.5 on more contemporary information, but that could change. As it stands right now, there's no word on that happening. I know there was another, did you have a question, sir?
I've noticed. Yeah, you guys may have heard of it. You know what that stands for?
Diversity, equity, inclusion, yes.
That's not, no. That's, in my experience, I've more found it.
So are you looking for companies that specifically do that or that don't do that? Well, if you're using that definition and you're defining it that way, I think you might be challenged. I helped someone last week who was in Phoenix who was specifically looking for a lot of nonprofits, not necessarily aligned with different corporate values. And it was fantastic for doing that. So I worked to create a very detailed prompt that gave her a little bit like a reference solution, but it also included a lot of contacts, a lot of information on mission and vision. So again, you can kind of take the idea of, I can get this kind of data out of a reference solution, but what else would I like to know? What are their core values? In fact, I did have it search for, do they do internships and things like that? But going back to your original question on DEI, I don't know. Go out and test it for us and see what you find out. Other questions? Yes, sir.
On the, the prompt that Andy gave for us was a cover letter for
Mm-hmm.
the prompt this job description.
You are.
That's when you're getting into the 3,000 word. A lot of information.
It is. I've never had an issue with specifically with a resume or cover letter. Yep. Into my question. Yep. Yeah. And I know there are some job descriptions that are 5 or 6 pages long, so don't quote me if you're dealing with one that's like that. But the example that I showed up here, the job description was 3 pages long. My resume was 2.5 pages long, and it had no issue. It had no.
You end up with a 6-page question that you're asking.
Yeah, if you were to scroll through and look at all the data that was put into that prompt, it would be six pages at the end of the day.
Crafting it in Word or whatever your choice is, and then pasting it?
Nope. You're going to see in the prompt template that I give you, the exact language is right there, and the areas in red are where I've just dropped in, just cut and paste my JD, my resume, and go from there. And it's worked thus far.
So Rusty, could you can insert a link to where you're
Well, that's what we're just talking about, is if it doesn't have access to the permission to get on the website, if there's not an API that's allowing it to talk.
Yeah, it needs credentials.
It needs you to do that, as it stands right now.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So there was an article on LinkedIn a few days ago talking about using ChatGPT and running it through ATS systems, and then now disqualifying anything where it matches too much of the job
Of-
description. Now, like, two thoughts: one, have you heard anything of that? And two, is ATS its own AI system? So
Why would they do that? So I can't answer the second one. I can say that I've heard a similar thing. In fact, there was a Forbes article that came out about 10 days ago that someone had shared with a number of us that was talking about up to 10% rejection of cover letters that look like they've been written by ChatGPT. But that's where I get into, you need to be able to craft tone and voice. So if you're just using the default setting in there, that's going to increase your chances of it maybe getting kicked out. I haven't had that issue thus far.
So cover letters, I understand, because those can sound very robotic when you put them in there. But in terms of if you put the job description in and it spits out a resume for you, and it has 100% of the keywords.
Yeah.
But let's just say your job, your actual experience, you're crafting it on your own, and you have 90% of the keywords. Do you see this posing a problem to people that are highly qualified?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if that's the criteria, that the candidate is too perfect, then yeah, I think so.
Is it a real issue in the people that have worked in HR and hiring, that first line of defense? Is this because those people have developed ATS systems and don't want to read as many resumes? Because it's going to spit them through is something to be manually reviewed.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
I don't know. I know that one of the things that's happening in the academic world is college students are actually training ChatGPT to insert a few errors into their paper, so that it seriously, and you can tell it to add a grammar error every 80 words or something like that, or every 100 words, and ChatGPT will add a grammar error to it, just so that they're not getting caught by some of the systems that are being developed out there. Yes, sir.
So you're going to compare ChatGPT to Bing at the very beginning?
Yeah.
Can you use the exact same thing that you did with ChatGPT in Bing, or?
You will get different responses. You can use the same prompt. The ones that I'm giving you, you can cut and paste into all of them, into Bard, doesn't mean they're going to do it well. In some cases, you'll see it's a report card, so you'll see some of them got an F in certain areas because they just didn't follow the prompt at the end of the day. I graded them on their ability to follow the prompt, their accuracy, and if there was any kind of creative element that was required, I gave them sort of like an extra bonus point for that. But yes, sir. My understanding right now is ChatGPT is using it to train their model. They are not, as of right now, turning around and selling it to anyone else like the Googles of the world may be doing with your data. That being said, if you have those concerns, you have the ability to turn on the privacy in the settings that I showed you there at the very end. Yes, sir.
So one question and one comment. The question would be, if I was having an interview and I knew the person I was going to be interviewing with, let's say it's some lady at a VP level, can I go in and say, hey, show me the type of social media post this person has created, or show me had they properties that they own, which would be public records, right? Do they have any divorce decrees that are public records? I mean, how deep can you go with personal data?
With personal data, again, because it's not accessing the internet, I'm not sure how much it's going to find. You can start by Googling yourself or ChatGPTing yourself, so to speak, to find out what it comes back with. I haven't heard that as a privacy concern yet. I think the issue has been more on what's happening with my data. And it's happening a lot faster in places like Europe these days. In fact, Italy has made ChatGPT persona non grata in their market. You can't use ChatGPT as of right now. The US, I think, is going to be a little slow to catch up on that. So.
And then one comment,
Absolutely.
I don't need ChatGPT to do that. Foster taught me how to do that.
Awesome. Embellishing. Well, if you struggle with embellishment, ChatGPT can help you out for sure. Yes, ma'am.
First, thank you so much for the presentation, it was really good. Is there anyone in here from HR or recruiting that has their view of how this is being used and stuff firsthand?
Betty, connect with a guy named Ralph Chapman. He was here. He had to leave. Unfortunately, he had to leave real early. He owns a company called HR Search Pros. I was going to tell you guys that earlier, but he had to leave. And check out HR Search Pros. He's going to be our guest speaker at the HR Career Search Network meeting tomorrow. It is on Zoom, so you guys don't have to drive, the whole thing. And that would be a good question to ask him tomorrow at that meeting.
What? Go ahead.
Rebecca.
I was just gonna say, I've had the opportunity to hear Rusty speak before. I did go in and gave it a job description and I asked it what are the questions that they would possibly ask. I asked it to do a SWOT analysis and I also asked it for its competition. To everyone's like how accurate. I used it as a jumping off board and then did the additional research myself. Interestingly, the questions that it asked, when I did the interview, those were typically the questions that it asked. And I was also, for the SWOT analysis, able to reposition myself, saying, I know that these are your opportunities and your threats. Based on my experience, this is how I'm going to help you solve it. I wasn't asking it to do everything, but it gave me a springboard into what I needed to do. I was able to do research and to verify it over the past couple of years, how things change.
And I think that's the key takeaway. It helps you do the research, but you have to be you and do the execution.
Absolutely.
Right. It's a tool.
It's a tool.
That's right. An imperfect one, an evolving one, but a tool.
You wouldn't ask your personal assistant to go up and do the shareholder meeting.
No.
Think of it the same way. Double check, trust, but verify.
Absolutely. Rusty, fantastic.
Thank you.
I want to remind you that I viewed this presentation, Rusty gave it online, and it's on Career DFW Facebook page, and because I'm connected on that, and this meeting with the two presentations you had this morning will be on YouTube, and the channel is called Stonebriar Events. Give it about 24 to 48 hours. But again, or if you view it on Career DFW's site, you'll be able to see the detail on those slides and be able to make notes and whatnot. So it'll really be beneficial. Steve? Pete? Yeah. You. Huh?
You'll see Rusty's presentation there, and we'll provide a link to your YouTube channel as well.
Right. Excellent, thank you.
And Pete,
Foster?
the prompt template, is that going to be in a certain part of the website? It's not part of the presentation, it's a separate document that's got all of the prompts written down. We'll talk afterwards.
We'll make sure it is.
Yep, we'll make sure it's loaded. Yeah. Excellent, thank you.